What if Magneto became the Emperor? Let's explore the depths of this scenario in the video. Overseeing the vast expanse of the Death Star, Palpatine stands on the bridge of his ship, watching as construction nears completion. Already the main weapon and most of the superstructure are finished. It only requires a few final touches before becoming fully operational. After that, the entire galaxy will tremble before its power. Palpatine's yellow eyes gleam with satisfaction as he observes the bustling activity below. Engineers and droids work tirelessly to finish the structure that will ensure the Empire's dominance. Suddenly, his comlink crackles to life. The voice of an officer comes through, barely audible from the sounds of blaster fire.
Emperor Palpatine, we have an intruder on the station. I don't know how he's boarded the station, but he's...
The transmission ends with the officer's scream, cut off by static. Palpatine's gaze narrows. He reaches for his lightsaber as the sounds of distant fighting grow louder, echoing through the halls. Blaster fire and screams fill his ears, followed by the unmistakable sounds of footsteps. His finger hovers over the power button of his lightsaber. Then, with a sudden, violent crash, the command center doors rip open. There's no explosion or saber cuts, but the metal screeches and twists as if it's alive. After a brief moment of silence, the doors then fly straight at Palpatine. In an instant, he has his lightsaber activated and ready, slicing through the door and sending its severed halves flying behind him. From the mangled doorway, a figure in crimson and purple appears, a helmet hiding his features. With a mere flick of his wrist, the debris parts before him, revealing the man at the heart of this destruction, Magneto. Palpatine shivers as he senses the power this man possesses. For the first time in many years, Palpatine knows fear.
Leave, Emperor. This station and its tyranny end now.
You? Who are you?
Your doom. Now will you make this easy, or will I get a challenge?
That fear momentarily turns into anger, as without another word, the Sith Lord lunges, his lightsaber arcing through the air in a deadly sweep. Magneto raises a hand, and the metal floor beneath Palpatine's feet rises and shields him from the attack. As Palpatine slices through, Magneto is already moving back and sends the shards flying at the Emperor, who stops to defend against the attack. He pushes these shards aside and snarls, unleashing a torrent of Sith lightning. Magneto raises the ruins of the door in front of himself, feeling the electricity crackle across it. He winces as the sparks strike him across the body, then channels a magnetic field to deflect the lightning into the wall. The room begins to shake from the electricity, but Magneto stumbles as the efforts prove exhausting. Palpatine takes this advantage and rushes forward, using the Force to enhance his speed. Magneto can barely block his attacks, lifting whatever objects he can find, pipes, panels, and even chunks of the ceiling. But as this buys him time, Palpatine shatters whatever he has to throw.
You cannot win. I am the Emperor.
Not anymore. His eyes begin to glow with power as he raises his hands. Palpatine brings his lightsaber down but freezes mid-swing. His eyes widen as his lightsaber refuses to move, no matter how much effort he puts in. Magneto shoves Palpatine back and takes hold of his lightsaber. As he stumbles back, the Emperor snarls and extends both hands to unleash the full fury of the dark side. Lightning arcs towards Magneto, but he lifts his lightsaber to deflect the attack, letting it bounce against the walls and floors of the command deck. As they strike the metal plating of the room, Magneto slowly moves forward, each step bending more and more of the metal, all of it collecting the electricity of Palpatine's attack. The Emperor's eyes widen in shock as his powers are being turned against him. Magneto opens his palm, his eyes unblinking as the metal wires and random debris of the deck fly towards Palpatine, all charged with his own dark power. The Emperor grits his teeth in shock, as the hunks of metal and debris embed themselves in the floor around him, a blast of lightning releasing with every impact. He is trapped in a cage of metal and electricity and cannot escape. With a final, desperate push, the Emperor attempts to force the debris away, but Magneto closes his fist, crashing the cage into Palpatine in a great flash of light. The Sith Lord screams, his body convulsing as the energy consumes him. The aftermath is nothing more than a smoldering pile of charred flesh and burnt robes. At that moment, several squads of stormtroopers burst through the ruined doors, blasters ready. They freeze, though, as they see the Emperor's smoking body and Magneto faces them, his eyes burning with fury while he readies his lightsaber. Rather than attack, though, the stormtroopers all drop to the ground and kneel at the sight of their new Emperor. Magneto takes his seat on the Emperor's throne and gives the order to move the battle station to Coruscant. Days later, the Imperial Senate and citizens of the capital world wake up to the sight of a moon-sized battle station hovering in orbit, with its laser pointed directly at them. As panic starts to set in, Magneto sends out a transmission across the planet.
People of Coruscant, look to the skies and understand this is where your resources have gone. Your Emperor has promised you peace and stability, but all he has delivered is a weapon of mass destruction. He does not plan to bring about change, but to frighten the galaxy into submission. For that reason, I have slain Palpatine. But in this time of chaos, I have demands for peace.
The Senate is in turmoil as they hear the news. Mas Amata tries to restore order and agrees to hear Magneto's demands.
As a gesture of goodwill, I shall dismantle this station's laser with Imperial supervision and return all related technology. Additionally, I will claim the title of Emperor. I will retain possession of this battle station, and Imperial worlds will be required to pay tribute to me. I require food, supplies, and energy to keep this station running.
This was a difficult decision to make, as even without its super laser, the Death Star still represents a massive Imperial investment. Losing it is a major humiliation for the Empire. But with its true nature revealed, most citizens want nothing to do with it, and want the weapon dismantled. Reluctantly, the Imperial government agrees to hand over the station to Magneto. They do make sure the laser and its weapons are destroyed, including all the necessary infrastructure. This will prevent him from installing a new laser. As they finish getting rid of the parts, Magneto immediately puts the engineers to work redesigning the system. Instead of a battle station, he begins redeveloping it into a place fit for habitation. He creates housing, hospitals, schools, and even artificial ecosystems. When these modifications are finished, Magneto takes his Death Star and vanishes into hyperspace. Weeks later, the people of Earth are greeted with a similar sight to those on Coruscant, as the Death Star looms ominously in the sky. Once again, Magneto arrives with a fresh message.
People of Earth, for too long my kind have been living under oppression, those you deem mutants. I had once believed that our two people could coexist in harmony, but I now see your hatred for my kind will never disappear. That is why I present you with a solution. To all members of Homo Superior, I come here with an offer. Leave this backwater wretch of a planet and join me. This station may house all of our kind, and I have sources who will keep us well supplied. Here we may forge our destiny away from the ignorant masses of Earth.
For countless mutants, this is an appealing offer. Soon, thousands of mutants flock to the Death Star, preferring that over the persecution they face on Earth. Not everyone supports this plan, as the X-Men refuse to join Magneto, preferring to fight for their rights on Earth. One of the few who does agree to meet Magneto is Professor X, who wants to see whether he is sincere about his intentions. Magneto is pleased to see his old friend accompanying him on this journey.
Charles, I hope that you will join me. Surely even you must see the potential of this endeavor.
It's a bold move to leave Earth on this thing.
It's a new start for mutant kind. The chance to thrive without the oppressive thumb of humanity.
And without the comfort of Earth.
I assure you, this station lacks nothing in comfort.
I suppose I'll have to experience that for myself.
And what of the students? Will I see them here?
Perhaps in time. I wanted to inspect this facility myself before I brought them with me.
Magneto is a bit disappointed to hear the X-Men will not be taking part, but allows Professor X to stay as a way to rekindle their friendship. However, many governments on Earth remain distrustful of Magneto. Even if his intentions are good, they interpret his actions above the planet in a giant space station as a show of force meant to intimidate them. Some believe that this might only be a lie for him to begin building a mutant army without Earth's interference. In response, the US government sends Agent Zero to infiltrate the mutant exodus and discover what Magneto is planning. As the deadline for their departure comes and goes, the Death Star leaves Earth forever. As they return to the Empire, the mutants learn that Magneto is honest about his desire for the mutants to find a new home. With the Death Star modified to provide shelter for mutants, it becomes a capital of sorts for the Empire. The starship travels across the galaxy, controlled by a crew handpicked by Magneto for their loyalty. Food, medicine, and other supplies flow into the station no matter where they are. However, few mutants know where the supplies are coming from, as one of Magneto's many rules is that no one is allowed to leave without his permission. However, there seems to be little reason for most mutants to leave, as they have everything they could ever ask for. They are perfectly happy to remain in the paradise that Magneto has created for them. What they don't realize is that this paradise comes from the suffering of countless people. Although Magneto leaves the day-to-day affairs of the Empire to Tarkin and the Senate, he continues to collect tribute from countless worlds, including resources, supplies, or technology, to keep the Death Star operational. Worlds who fail to pay these taxes face harsh repercussions from Magneto. Though the Senate remains on Coruscant, tribute from all across the galaxy flows into the station, providing them with the means to sustain their population. This problem only gets worse as, under the Imperial Senate, the Empire once again falls into decadence and corruption. Little care is placed on administration and economic development for the regular people. Magneto is only concerned for his people's safety. This leaves the Empire rife for rebellion as more groups rise against them and leave Vader and the Imperial military to deal with them. Although he handles the task well at first, the Dark Lord grows frustrated with his situation. He repeatedly visits the Death Star to discuss the situation with Magneto, trying to get him to control the Senate. However, Magneto remains aloof. During these visits, Vader is approached by Agent Zero.
Greetings. Lord Vader, is it?
I have no time for this. Tell your master Magneto that I have important matters to attend to.
Begging your pardon, but I am no agent of Magneto. I serve an organization that will benefit greatly from his downfall, just as you do.
And you think your words will sway me?
No, not with words. But I may do something that might benefit us both. My government has immense resources and experience dealing with people of Magneto's abilities.
You don't think I can defeat him?
Given how your empire has fared so far, no. But together, we might be able to overcome him.
An alliance? What could you possibly offer that would interest the Empire?
Magneto has seized control of the Death Star, and his mutant followers are consolidating their power. Together we can eliminate Magneto and capture his mutants, so they can be neutralized. In exchange, we can hand the Death Star back to your empire.
An enticing offer. Very well. I shall consider it.
Several weeks pass, and the Death Star approaches its next system, but this time under escort by a fleet of Star Destroyers. Vader reports danger in the system as several worlds have refused to pay their tribute. The fleet's presence is a show of force, a reminder of the Empire's dominance. As they near one of the planets, alarms begin to blare as several freighters and armed merchant ships appear from the atmosphere in attack formation. They unleash a barrage of turbo laser fire before breaking off. The heavier Star Destroyers turn to engage, firing their weapons back at them, illuminating the darkness of space. Rather than engaging the fleet, though, most of these vessels charge directly for the Death Star, dodging the Star Destroyers. Although it no longer possesses its super laser, the station still contains many smaller weapons. One rebel ship erupts in flames, but as the debris scatters everywhere, dozens of smaller ships fly through the wreckage. Magneto zooms in on the view screen to reveal a swarm of sentinels. These mutant hunting machines all fly toward the Death Star, weapons blazing as they make their way inside. Alarms begin to blare as mutants scream and try to get away from the machines.
Vader, you must stop these ships. They contain droids.
The fleets begin to turn to their side for a moment. Magneto believes that they are there to aid him, but the Star Destroyers turn their weapons upon him, pouring torrents of fire on the Death Star and only adding to the chaos. Without the super laser, the Death Star's defenses are inadequate against this new threat and struggle to hold back the onslaught. In the chaos, Professor X takes charge of organizing the defenses, using his telepathic abilities to coordinate the mutants and providing them with guidance to use their powers. As the Sentinels advance, they face fierce resistance. Meanwhile, Magneto watches from a viewport and dons his helmet. He takes one of the shuttles and advances straight towards Vader's flagship. He ignores most of the Sentinels, but uses his magnetic powers to crush the machines that get in his way. He extends his hand and concentrates on his powers. It takes tremendous force, but he manages to rip the hull of the Star Destroyer open. The metal tears like paper, exposing the interior to the vacuum of space. Guards and crew members fly out into the void as Magneto lands in the hangar. Facing him is Darth Vader, who manages to retain his footing and holds out his lightsaber.
Vader, you will regret this betrayal.
It is you who will regret your transgression, Magneto. Your incompetence has led this empire to ruin. I intend to fix that.
Without another word, Vader moves forward, rushing with his lightsaber flashing at Magneto's face. As the blade approaches, he counters and sends metallic shards at the Sith Lord, sending him stumbling back before he manages to deflect them with his lightsaber. As he steps back, Vader responds and rips up a chunk of metal and throws it back. This forces Magneto to break it apart, allowing Vader to charge at him. His lightsaber flashes and swings at the mutant, forcing him to back away and step aside. But as he dodges, he begins channeling his strength against the very hull of the ship, twisting the support beams and bending the floors to try and trap the Dark Lord. But each time he closes in, Vader slashes them apart. In the last attack, Vader slashes through a beam and sends it flying toward Magneto, who must leap aside. This leaves him vulnerable as Vader picks him up with the Force and slams him down. Magneto screams in pain, but through the agony, he begins channeling his powers, reaching out towards Vader and clenching his fist. Suddenly, the metal in Vader's suit begins to contract, pushing against him and causing him to gasp. His armor begins sparking and smoking, but the Dark Lord remains standing. It does allow Magneto to gather a wave of molten metal and send it flying over Vader, pinning him under the debris. As Vader remains pinned, his lightsaber flies from his hand, but he reaches up for the chunk of metal pinning his leg and hurls it at Magneto. He responds by catching it in midair and slowly breaking it, shattering it into a million shards and hurling them at Vader. Each one pierces his armor, leaving him covered in these needles. Magneto uses his powers to take a step further, pressing them deeper until they pierce at his heart and vital organs. Meanwhile, the Death Star's interior is turned into a battleground, with Sentinels being driven back by the mutants. Professor X remains organizing the defense, communicating with the mutants telepathically, moving people where they are needed, or advising them on how to use their powers. Though it requires a great deal more of his energy, he uses his telekinetic abilities to break apart Sentinels. However, many still fall or end up as prisoners to the Sentinels. But their advance slowly stalls and allows the mutants to maintain their position. That is, until he hears an explosion from the command center. He guides his hover chair to see what's happening and finds Agent Zero gunning down the bridge crew as he begins to tinker with the control panels. One of the surviving stormtroopers lays dying in a pool of blood and calls out to Professor X.
Stop him!
Just what do you think you're doing?
Professor Xavier. I was wondering when you'd show up.
You are working with those Sentinels. Your actions have endangered us all.
You endangered the Earth by allowing Magneto to continue this plan unchecked. Haven't you wondered where these supplies come from?
What do you mean?
His fingers clench as he considers this, the same question re-emerging in his mind. But before anything else, Zero lunges at him, firing his pistols. Professor X barely manages to snatch a chair and levitate it up to block his attacks. He hurls it forward, but Zero leaps over it and prepares to fire again. However, Professor X uses his powers to cause him to stumble onto the ground. He pushes him against the table. Despite the strain, Zero manages to raise his gun and fire off a shot, which grazes Charles's ear. Professor X responds with a powerful psychic attack that forces the agent to scream and clutch his temples.
You were saying?
He's been stealing supplies from other planets, enslaving and oppressing them.
Xavier eases his attack and lets Zero drop to the ground, while he approaches the stormtrooper.
Is what he says true?
Yes, sir. We were collecting tribute from...
Before he can say more, a shard of metal pierces his helmet. Professor X gasps and looks up, seeing Magneto standing there. Zero's eyes widen, but he meets a similar fate as a shard of metal impales him too.
Magneto, what have you done?
I did what was necessary, Charles. Agent Zero is a traitor. Surely you can see that. He claimed you were enslaving this galaxy. Was that a falsehood? I only demanded they pay tribute to feed our people. Surely that's a small price to pay for all the wrongs our people have suffered.
You treat the entire galaxy as if they are the same people who murdered your family.
You think if I simply took our people away from Earth, we would be allowed to live in peace? We would suffer the same discrimination from this galaxy as we did on Earth. And even then, the humans refused to leave us in peace. No. The only way for mutants to live in peace is through our new order. Join me, Charles. Together we can end the conflict and create a new order.
The battle echoes through the corridors as the two old friends face each other. The Sentinels continue their assault, but the Imperial fleet is gone. Using Vader's ship, Magneto rammed the remaining vessels, leaving nothing but debris. Professor X can only stare at the ruins and realize that this is a prelude to the destruction Magneto is prepared to unleash.
I'm sorry. I cannot.
Then you are my enemy, Charles.
Magneto raises his hand to unleash a magnetic wave. Professor X reaches out with a telepathic counterattack. As the pair's minds clash, the room begins to shudder and distort. Metallic shards and tendrils rip free from the control room, but then freeze in place. It takes all the professor's willpower to just keep the room from breaking apart. Xavier surges forward, flying through the ruins of the command center and down the same hallways the remaining mutants had just driven the Sentinels from. But amidst the wreckage, he finds what he's looking for: the escape pods. Magneto chases after him, wall panels ripping free from the space Professor X just passed. As he prepares to enter the escape pod, the walls begin to close around him, literally. Panels curl around him like tentacles wrapping around his body. With a final bid for freedom, Professor X throws himself from his chair and into the escape pod, just as the tendrils crush his chair. He activates the launch sequence and flies out into the debris field. Although Magneto wants to go after him, he knows it is too dangerous to remain here and decides to withdraw. As he departs, he contacts his second-in-command, Governor Tarkin, with new orders to begin constructing a second Death Star. Days later, In the depths of space, the Millennium Falcon and a handful of rebel scavengers roamed the wreckage of the fleet, looking for anything worth taking.
Should we pick up anything interesting? An escape pod. Let's check it out.
They pull the ship into the Falcon and find Professor X on board, shivering, haggard, but still alive.
Before we let you on board, mind telling me which Imperial you were serving? The one with the glowing sword, or the one who can bend metal with his mind?
My name's Professor Charles Xavier. I have no loyalty to either man. I need your help. You must take me to Earth.
Earth, huh? That's a bit off the path of our usual route. What's so important about getting there?
I believe that Magneto may launch an attack there.
All right. We'll take you to Earth. But you better have one hell of a story to tell. Otherwise, the princess is going to kill me.
On their way back to Earth, Professor X explains his situation, how the Sentinels were sent from Earth to attack the Death Star, and how Magneto might attack this place out of revenge. While they head back, Han contacts Leia and the Rebel Alliance about this, warning them, but also saying this might be their opportunity to pin down and defeat the Empire once and for all. Professor X also contacts the X-Men on Earth, informing them of how the Sentinels have captured some of their mutants and urges them to rescue them. By the time they reach Earth, Beast reports that they managed to rescue the captured mutants and have taken them back to the mansion, but the government is demanding they return them or risk arrest. Rather than accept these terms, Professor X orders them to stall until he arrives. The journey takes several more days, but when he arrives, he returns to a blockade around his home as U.S. troops, reporters, and civilians all surround the perimeter while the X-Men remain cautiously behind the gate. That is until they see the Millennium Falcon landing in between both groups. Professor X is carried out of the ship by Han and Chewbacca. At first, the soldiers and officers respond with jeers and insults, demanding he return the prisoners and calling him a criminal. Suddenly, Professor X lets out a shout amplified by his psychic powers.
Enough. While you sit here squabbling over old grudges, do you fools not realize you've brought a great danger upon us? Because of your mistrust, Magneto is out for blood. He plans on returning to Earth with his empire.
The words silence the crowd, whose anger morphs into terror. He lets the words hang in the air for a moment before shaking his head.
Not everyone supports Magneto's plans, and these rebels have stood against him. Together, we may stand a chance at ending his reign of terror.
The UN is skeptical at first of these developments, but as Han explains the galactic civil war unfolding and the true power Magneto possesses, they all agree. For the next 2 years, Earth prepares for this invasion. The human governments and mutants join forces and begin training their armies, researching new technologies, and preparing for the coming attack. Meanwhile, Princess Leia and the Rebellion ally with Earth and begin deploying ships and fighters planetside to help them. Despite initial skepticism, all people of Earth, mutant and human, join forces like never before. Groups set their differences apart, united in fear of a common enemy. The fear and distrust they felt gave way to acceptance and respect. Then, at last, the fateful day arrives. The Death Star 2 emerges from hyperspace, along with a formidable Imperial fleet. But instead of the primitive forces they expect, the Imperials face an advanced coalition of rebels, mutants, and humans. The skies above Earth erupt in a fierce battle, as starships and fighters rush up against the capital ships. Despite being outnumbered, the Earth forces fight with unexpected tenacity and strength. The advanced technology, courtesy of the rebel support, presses the Imperial fleet, but does not stop them from deploying hundreds of mutants to fight with the Earth forces. But amid the chaos, the Millennium Falcon streaks through the battlefield, avoiding enemy fire thanks to Han Solo's expert piloting. It lands in the hangar bay of the Death Star 2 and deploys Han, Chewbacca, Professor X, Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Storm. They immediately face off against the stormtroopers and mutant guards. As blaster fire streaks towards them, they face Cyclops unleashing powerful optic blasts, while Jean Grey tosses enemies and Storm unleashes bursts of lightning that shatter armor and disable weapons. Han and Chewbacca both run alongside them, firing blasters and picking off stragglers. Professor X uses his telepathic abilities to guide the team and disable enemies with mind attacks. The guards stand little chance as they secure the hangar and advance deeper into the station. They eventually reach a massive chamber where Magneto is waiting for them. He floats above them, surrounded by magnetic energy.
Eric, stop this madness. It's not too late to end this peacefully.
No, it is. It was too late 2 years ago when I began my exodus. Earth will never leave us in peace. And I see now you cannot see it. I'm sorry for what must happen.
Magneto's response is a wave of magnetic force that slams into the group, sending them sprawling. Cyclops leaps to his feet and fires his optic blasts, but Magneto deflects it with a plate of steel. Jean tries to shove debris against him, but Magneto meets her attack head-on and shatters whatever debris she throws into dust. Rather than fall, Storm summons a whirlwind and shapes it around towards him, trying to batter Magneto with it. A miniature hurricane forms around him, but through the torrent, magnetic blasts strike her and sends her stumbling to the ground. Han and Chewbacca join Cyclops, firing their blasts, but none of their attacks can connect. It does buy Professor X time to attack, launching a telepathic assault. For a moment, Magneto's power flickers as Charles breaks through his defenses. With it, Professor X tries to get through to him. However, Magneto tightens his grip and shoves him back. With a surge of power, Magneto intensifies his assault, as Storm tries to summon a whirlwind. Magneto rips plates from the walls and sends them flying dangerously.
You can't beat us all, Magneto.
I don't have to. As we speak, my Death Star is preparing to fire upon Earth.
Professor X tries to get closer, but his hover chair takes a hit, causing him to sprawl to the ground. Magneto looms over him, holding up a chunk of metal. But before he can slam it down, Han Solo fires a shot against Magneto's helmet, breaking his concentration. Cyclops follows up with more powerful strikes, sending him sprawling. Before the debris can crush them, Jean uses her telekinesis to hold it up and throw it aside. As Magneto gets up, Storm summons a powerful gust of wind that holds him in place.
Eric, please. It's not too late to change. Why can't you see they will never accept us? You have not seen what I have seen. Take another look around, my friend.
Suddenly, Storm reaches for his helmet and pulls it off. Magneto gasps in surprise and thrashes around, trying to break free. As Professor X reaches for his hand, Magneto gasps as a dozen mental images play through his mind. He sees the Earth changing over the years, seeing the distrust and anger the humans felt against mutants change into respect. He watches as governments pass laws to protect mutant rights. He sees them train and fight together, and even humans defending mutants. As the last of the images fade, Magneto calls for surveillance footage. He sees a similar occurrence as humans and mutants fight side by side, protecting each other and dying together by his mutants' hands. Before he realizes it, tears are rolling down his face as he watches something he never thought he'd see. Professor X gently taps his shoulder.
It's a beautiful sight, and one that does not need end, unless you allow it.
Magneto looks up at him, and slowly bows his head and reaches for the controls. Using his powers, he shuts them off. The sight of the Death Star 2 powering down confuses the Imperial ranks until Magneto orders a surrender. Most of his followers oblige, but many choose to retreat into Imperial space. For his part, Magneto willingly turns himself in and allows himself to face Earth justice. The Death Star 2 is immediately destroyed, resulting in another Imperial defeat. For the X-Men and the Rebel Alliance, though, this is just the beginning. With so many mutants and Imperials running around, they begin the task of slowly hunting them down. This time, though, they have the full might of the Earth backing them, as a combined force of humans and mutants assemble to end this threat and finally bring peace. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.